I had left the boutique still smiling, the soft swish of my new wedding dress following me down the street. My father's construction firm, the same empire Caleb had somehow woven himself into months ago, was the centerpiece of my family's life, and I thought, our life together. I was naive. When I opened the front door of our house earlier than expected, I was greeted by an odd stillness. Usually, Caleb would be sprawled on the couch, scrolling through emails or teasing me about my obsession with lace and tulle. Today, silence. Too quiet. I heard muffled voices from the master bathroom. A laugh, unmistakably Caleb's, a low, easy sound that I had once loved. But there was another voice, sharp and familiar. I froze. It was my sister Lila. The bathroom door was ajar, steam curling out, giving me glimpses of shadows that didn't belong to me. I tiptoed closer, heart hammering, just intending to peek. She's completely blind to the fact that the firm will be mine once she signs the papers, Caleb said, grinning. I know, Lila replied, her voice dripping with amusement. And she actually thinks you love her. It's almost cruel.
The words pierced my chest.
Almost. I whispered under my breath. I should have turned and run. I should have screamed. But my legs betrayed me. I couldn't move. The bathroom door creaked slightly, and the two of them laughed again. Laughter that had once sounded like joy in my life, now a knife twisting in my heart. She has no idea. The firm, the wealth, even the wedding. Everything is just for show, Caleb continued. I felt my knees give way, my fingers clenching the edge of the wall. I wanted to believe I had misheard. Maybe it was a joke. But the betrayal in his tone, the way my sister chuckled along with him, told me everything I needed to know. You're going to get away with this? Lila asked. Caleb's reply was slow, deliberate. Once the contract is signed and the wedding's done, she won't even notice. I married her for the company, not the girl. And just like that, the world around me tilted and collapsed. I stumbled backward, letting the door slam behind me as I fled the house. I couldn't think. I couldn't process. All I knew was panic, pure and searing. Outside, the sky had darkened into the bruised purple of late afternoon. The street stretched ahead, bright with headlights and buzzing with traffic. I ran blindly, sobbing into the air, tasting betrayal on my tongue.
Why?
I whispered.
Why?
I didn't see the speeding delivery truck until it was too late. The sound of its horn blared through the chaos of my thoughts. My world exploded into noise and pain, and then everything went black. In that instant, the old Ava, the one who had lived to please her family, who had trusted blindly, who had poured her love into a man undeserving, died on that pavement. The hospital was sterile and quiet when I awoke. Beeping monitors and the scent of antiseptic replaced the chaos of betrayal and the roar of traffic. A man in surgical scrubs stood at my bedside, calm and authoritative. His dark eyes held mine without judgment. You're lucky to be alive, he said softly. I'm Dr. Rhys Montgomery. You've been through trauma, but we'll get you through this. Even in my haze of pain and fear, there was something about the steadiness in his voice, the way he didn't flinch at my brokenness. I don't remember, I stammered. You don't need to, he replied. Right now, focus on surviving. And in that moment, I realized something terrifyingly beautiful. The old Ava had died. The new Ava, cautious, broken, but unyielding, was being born. And for the first time, I wasn't alone. The first time I opened my eyes and realized I could feel the stiffness in my limbs, I panicked. Pain surged through my body, a harsh reminder that the accident hadn't spared me. My left leg throbbed like it was screaming, my arms were weak, and my back felt as if it had been folded into a paper crane and then unfolded roughly. Rhys was there, of course, calm as ever. His presence had become a constant since the surgery, a quiet anchor in the storm that my life had become. You're awake, he said softly, brushing a lock of hair from my forehead. How's the pain? I don't know, I whispered, my voice hoarse. It's everywhere. That's expected, he said. And it will get better. Slowly, but it will. Today, we start moving. One step at a time. I swallowed, trying to summon courage I wasn't sure I had. Step, like literally? He gave a small, patient smile. Exactly like that. First with your arms, then legs, then eventually you'll walk on your own again. Physical therapy began the next morning. The therapist, a sprightly woman with a kind smile, guided me through exercises that were simple in theory but torturous in execution. I shook, sweat on my brow, heart racing with frustration and shame. "You're pushing too hard," Rhys said gently, appearing behind me. "You're not failing. This is progress." "I hate this," I admitted, voice breaking. "I feel weak." "You're not weak," he said, lifting my hand and holding it. "You're alive. You survived betrayal and a near-death experience. If that's weak, I don't know what strength is." I looked up at him, and something strange happened. The first flicker of trust, of connection. I had spent so long believing men like Caleb existed everywhere. Charming, selfish, manipulative. But Rhys, he didn't fit the pattern. Days passed. Weeks passed. I learned to sit upright without help, to stand with Rhys's support, to take a few tentative steps along the polished hospital floors. Each time I faltered, he didn't sigh. He didn't scold. He only steadied me, whispering encouragements I barely heard over my own racing thoughts. "You're stronger than you think," he said one evening as I collapsed into the chair, exhausted from a simple walking circuit. "I don't feel strong," I murmured. "Strength isn't always obvious," he replied. "Sometimes it's surviving the things that almost break you. And you've survived more than most." I noticed the way his gaze lingered, just a fraction longer than necessary. My heart skipped in response. Confusion, disbelief, longing. I tried to shove it down, reminding myself that Caleb's betrayal had left scars that would take years to heal. But Rhys was patient. He didn't demand my heart. He didn't demand my gratitude. He only offered his presence, and gradually, my walls began to crumble. One night, after a particularly grueling session, he helped me to the couch in my hospital suite. I was trembling, exhausted, but he didn't let go. His hand rested lightly on my shoulder, and I felt something warm in my chest, safety, maybe even a hint of something like hope. "You'll walk on your own soon," he whispered. "And when you do, I'll be there." I closed my eyes, letting the warmth of his words wash over me. The old Ava had died. The new Ava, cautious, broken, but slowly rebuilding, was learning to breathe again. And with each small victory in therapy, I realized that recovery wasn't just physical. It was emotional. And for the first time in months, I felt the faint stirrings of something else. Trust.
Desire.
A spark that dared to believe that someone like Rhys could care for someone like me, not for my family's name, my wealth, or my past, but for me. And maybe, just maybe, love could find its way through the cracks. The days blended into a rhythm I hadn't felt in years. Morning stretches, therapy sessions, iced compresses, and the quiet hum of machines that measured my pulse, my strength, my progress. The hospital room felt less like a cage and more like a cocoon, each day allowing the broken pieces of me to settle into something new, something stronger. Rhys was there every morning, standing at the foot of my bed, his dark eyes scanning the monitors as if he could see the invisible scars buried beneath the surface. Some mornings, I found myself staring at him before I even spoke. The way his sleeves were rolled up, the quiet authority in his voice, the patience that never wavered. It was magnetic, infuriating, and terrifying all at once. "You're ready for the next set of exercises," he said one morning, his voice calm but firm. "But first, tell me how your heart feels."
I
don't know," I admitted, hesitating. "I think I'm afraid." "Afraid of what?" he asked, his gaze softening. "Afraid of trusting anyone again," I said, the words tasting bitter. "Caleb, everything he did. My sister." My voice cracked. I swallowed hard. "I feel like I'm going to let someone else in, and they'll just—" He didn't finish the sentence for me.
He didn't need to.
Instead, he took my hand, steadying me. "Then take this slowly. One step at a time, not just in therapy, but in life." Weeks passed. I learned to lift my arms without shaking, to stand without leaning on anything, to take small steps without fear. And with each success, the fear in my chest ebbed, replaced by a growing trust in the man beside me. One evening, as the sun dipped low, painting the room in a warm gold, Rhys helped me stretch my legs on the therapy mat. His hands were firm, guiding, but there was a gentleness I hadn't expected. "You're improving faster than expected," he said, his voice quiet, almost personal. "But I can see when you hold back." I looked up at him, catching the subtle concern in his gaze. I don't want to fall behind. I don't want to disappoint you." "You could never disappoint me," he replied, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "I'm here because I choose to be, not because of any expectation. And you're already exceeding anything I could have anticipated." His words stirred something fragile inside me. A warmth, a flutter, something that hadn't existed since I had felt betrayal. I wanted to tell him that, wanted to reach for him, and admit that I was scared but also hopeful. But I didn't. Instead, I let him continue helping me, letting his presence fill the spaces where fear had once ruled. Then, one night, after an especially challenging session, I collapsed onto the couch in exhaustion. Rhys sat beside me, close enough that I could feel his warmth, the faint scent of cedar, and something clean lingering from his cologne. "You did well today," he said softly. "I know it hurts, but you pushed through. That's strength." I looked at him, really looked, and for the first time, I allowed myself to see him not just as my doctor, but as a man who might belong in my life. My heart, still tender from betrayal, thumped wildly, and I quickly looked away, embarrassed. "I thank you," I murmured, "for everything." "You don't have to thank me," he replied. "Just let me be here. Let me help." And as I leaned back, letting the exhaustion take me, I realized something. Trust wasn't something that could be forced. It grew slowly, like the first green shoots of spring, fragile but determined. And with Rhys by my side, I could feel it beginning to bloom. For the first time since the accident, I allowed myself to hope that love could be real, and that maybe, just maybe, I could let someone in without fear. Even as I focused on recovery, the shadow of Caleb's betrayal followed me. Every time I closed my eyes, I could see him laughing with Lila in our master bathroom, the cruel satisfaction in his grin like a wound that refused to heal. But I knew I couldn't stay trapped in the past. I had to reclaim my life, and I had Rhys beside me. One morning, as Rhys helped me with balance exercises, my phone buzzed. It was a message from my father. "Ava, you need to know what's happening with the firm. Caleb's trying to finalize some contracts under your name. Be careful." My heart sank. Even while I was recovering, he was scheming. "I'm not ready to face him," I admitted to Rhys, voice shaking. "Not yet." He paused, holding my hands for support. "You don't have to confront him alone. And you don't have to confront him immediately. We do this on your terms." "But he's manipulating the company," I said, frustration bubbling. "I can't just sit here while he takes everything." "You've survived more than that, Ava," he said softly, tilting my chin up to meet his eyes. "You have the strength now. And when the time comes, I'll be there with you. Not to fight your battles for you, but to make sure you're never alone." I felt a rush of gratitude, mixed with a stirring warmth I couldn't ignore. Rhys wasn't just my doctor. He had become my anchor, my support, and slowly, the thought of him made my chest tighten in a way that had nothing to do with fear. A few days later, I finally got the courage to visit the firm. The familiar lobby, once a symbol of security and family pride, now felt like a battlefield. Caleb greeted me with his practiced charm.
"Ava."
"I didn't expect to see you back so soon," he said, his smile too sharp, too rehearsed. "I'm here to review some contracts," I said coolly, refusing to let my voice betray my inner turmoil. Caleb's eyes flickered, a brief flash of surprise before he masked it. "Of course. Anything for my beautiful wife." I ignored the flattery. "It's come to my attention that certain agreements were made without my knowledge. I need copies immediately." He laughed lightly. "I think you're overreacting. Everything is perfectly legal." Rhys, who had accompanied me, stepped forward. Legally or ethically, it's a mess, he said. His tone was measured, but the authority behind it was undeniable. Caleb's face tightened. What is this? You bringing your personal doctor here? I met Rhys's eyes, silently grateful for his presence. He's here because I don't stand alone anymore, I said. And neither do my interests. Over the next few weeks, I worked with Rhys to investigate the contracts and uncover Caleb's manipulations. Every document, every signature, every forged clause was another piece of the puzzle. And with each discovery, my anger transformed into resolve. At night, after long days of therapy and legal maneuvering, Rhys would sit beside me, brushing a stray hair from my face or holding my hand as we discussed strategy. I noticed the small ways he cared, making sure I ate, adjusting my pillows, asking about my dreams, and I realized that my heart, though battered, was responding to him. One evening, as the sun set, painting the city in gold and pink, I whispered, I don't think I ever knew what it meant to feel safe around someone. You are safe, Rhys replied, his voice low and tender. And you will always be with me. And in that moment, I allowed myself to believe not just in survival, but in love. The kind of love that healed, that strengthened, that promised that even after betrayal, life could be beautiful again. The moment I walked into my father's office, I felt a surge of clarity. Months of betrayal, pain, and fear had been distilled into a single purpose, reclaiming what was mine. Caleb thought I was weak, broken, and compliant. He had no idea the woman he had underestimated was alive, stronger, sharper, and fueled by a desire for justice. Rhys walked beside me, his presence steady, reassuring. Even after months of therapy, I wasn't fully mobile on my own, but with him supporting me, I felt untouchable. Remember, he whispered as we entered, this isn't about revenge. It's about reclaiming your life. I nodded. The boardroom was intimidating. Caleb sat at the head of the table, smug, reviewing a stack of papers. Lila perched nearby with that infuriatingly confident smile. They didn't see me walk in. Surprise, I said, my voice cold and controlled. Caleb looked up, startled, then smirked.
Ava.
Back so soon? I thought you'd be recovering or crying somewhere. I ignored the jab. I'm here to review the firm's recent decisions. It seems you've made quite a few on your own. Rhys stepped forward. And I'm here to make sure everything aligns with legal and ethical standards, he said evenly. His dark eyes pinned Caleb in place, a silent warning that this wasn't just about Ava anymore. Caleb laughed nervously. You brought what? Your doctor? What does he know about business? I know enough, Rhys replied, calm and lethal, to ensure that no one takes advantage of someone who's not in the room to defend themselves. You thought she was alone. You were wrong. I felt a thrill of empowerment I hadn't known I'd missed. Standing there, Rhys's hand brushing mine briefly, I realized how much I had been underestimated, and how dangerous that could make a woman once she decided to fight back. Over the next weeks, we meticulously built our case. Rhys used his influence on the board, carefully presenting evidence of Caleb's mismanagement and his fraudulent attempts to gain control over company assets. Every forged document, every secret transfer, every lie he had woven into contracts became a weapon in our hands. I watched Caleb unravel, the confident mask slipping from his face during board meetings. Lila tried to intervene, but the proof was undeniable. For the first time, I was not just Ava, the compliant daughter and wife. I was Ava, the strategist, the rightful owner, the woman no one could manipulate. And Rhys? He was there for every victory, every small triumph. He never took the spotlight, never claimed credit. He simply held my hand after tense meetings, offered quiet encouragement when exhaustion made me tremble, and occasionally brushed a kiss across my temple when I let my guard down. One evening, after Caleb had been officially removed from his position, we sat on the balcony, overlooking the city. The skyline was glowing with lights, reflections dancing across the windows. I leaned into Rhys, feeling his steady heartbeat through his chest against my back. You did this, he murmured. You reclaimed everything they tried to take. No, I said softly. We did this. You helped me see my strength. He pressed his lips to my shoulder, warm and tender. I didn't help you. I reminded you who you were, and I fell for you while watching you rise. I froze, heart hammering. Slowly, I turned in his arms to face him. His gaze was open, honest, and full of something I hadn't dared to expect. Love. I didn't think I'd ever trust again, I whispered. You don't have to think, he said. Just feel. And I promise, I'm not going anywhere. I closed the distance between us. Our kiss was slow, deliberate, a mix of relief, passion, and a promise of the life we were building together. One where betrayal didn't define us, and love could finally thrive. The road ahead was still long, with therapy and rebuilding my life, but for the first time, I felt alive and truly, irrevocably loved. The first time I laughed without guilt or fear since the accident, I realized something profound. I was healing, and it wasn't just my body. It was my heart. Rhys had become more than a doctor or a protector. He was a constant in my world, the one I could lean on without hesitation. He was there when I struggled to walk, there when legal documents threatened to overwhelm me, and there when I simply needed someone to sit in silence with me. One afternoon, after a particularly grueling therapy session, I collapsed onto the couch in my recovery suite, muscles screaming, body slick with sweat. Rhys appeared beside me with a wet towel and a gentle smile. You pushed too hard, he said softly, placing the towel on my forehead. I just want to feel normal again, I admitted, closing my eyes. Normal isn't a race, he replied. It's the small victories. Like standing without support, like walking unassisted, like feeling again. I opened my eyes and found him staring at me with an intensity that made my breath catch. It wasn't clinical concern anymore. It was personal. Deeply personal. I don't know how to do this, I whispered. To feel safe, to feel cared for. He leaned closer, his hand brushing mine. You just have to let it happen, he said. You don't have to control everything. I'll be here. Every step. Our hands intertwined, tentative at first, then with more certainty. My body responded before my mind could catch up, a warmth spreading through my chest, a flutter I hadn't known since before betrayal. Weeks turned into months. I grew stronger, walking longer distances, lifting weights again, regaining the agility I thought I had lost. And through it all, Rhys remained a steady presence, guiding me physically and emotionally. One evening, we stayed late in the therapy room, the city lights painting our faces in soft orange. My body exhausted, but my spirit alive. I turned to him. You've been here through everything, I said. And yet, I feel like I've fallen for you while I was too weak to even notice. He smiled, that rare, unguarded smile that made my chest ache. You weren't weak, he said. You were surviving. And now, I hope you let yourself live with me. I leaned into him, his arms wrapped around me naturally, without hesitation, without fear. The kiss we shared was soft at first, exploratory, then deeper, a merging of relief, desire, and trust. Every touch was a reminder that I was no longer the Ava who had blindly trusted Caleb. I was a woman who had survived betrayal, near death, and manipulation. And I could finally allow herself to love fully, without fear, without compromise. That night, as we lay side by side in my suite, talking quietly about nothing and everything, I realized the truth. Love was not about rushing or perfect moments. It was about presence. It was about care, attention, and unwavering support. With Rhys beside me, I felt whole again. Stronger, braver, alive. And for the first time since the accident, I could see a future where trust and passion coexisted. The road to recovery was far from over, but I knew one thing for certain. I would face it not alone, but with the man who had become my anchor, my confidant, my love. And for the first time, I felt unbreakable. The day of our private wedding arrived quietly, without fanfare or announcement. No media, no socialite gossip, no prying eyes. Just the two of us, the estate, and the life we had fought so hard to reclaim. I stood in front of the mirror, the soft fabric of my dress brushing against my skin. Unlike my original wedding gown, the one Caleb had laughed about behind my back, this dress wasn't a symbol of manipulation or betrayal. It was mine, elegant, strong, and carefully chosen to reflect the woman I had become. Rhys appeared in the doorway, simple in a dark suit, yet every bit as commanding and gentle as ever. His eyes caught mine, and I felt that familiar flutter in my chest, trust, desire, and love all rolled into one. "You look incredible," he said softly. "I feel incredible," I admitted. "Finally, like this day is actually mine." He approached and took my hand, his touch grounding me. "It is yours. Every step, every choice. And I'll be here every day, not because of what you've been through, but because of who you are." We walked together to the small garden where a few close friends and family, those who had supported me through recovery, waited. The flowers had been arranged carefully, sunlight filtering through the leaves, casting a golden glow on everything. The ceremony was brief, heartfelt, and deeply personal. No vows copied from books, no empty promises. Just words from the heart. "I promise to stand beside you," I whispered, voice strong, "to honor your strength, your care, and to love you fully, without fear or hesitation." Rhys held my gaze, his hand tightening around mine. "And I promise to always choose you, to protect your heart, and to celebrate every victory, yours and ours, with unwavering devotion." When our lips met, it wasn't just a kiss. It was a sealing of everything we had fought for: survival, trust, love, and the reclamation of a life stolen from me. Afterward, we danced in the garden under the fading sun, laughter spilling freely. My legs were strong now, my heart unburdened, and my soul lighter than it had been in years. For the first time, I wasn't defined by betrayal, fear, or weakness. I was defined by choice, by resilience, and by love that had been earned, not given out of obligation. Later, in the quiet of our suite, Rhys traced the curve of my shoulder with his fingers, soft and deliberate. "You're extraordinary, Ava," he murmured. "And I don't say that lightly." "I'm extraordinary because of you," I replied, leaning into him. "Because you believed in me when I couldn't." We fell asleep that night entwined, the world outside the estate irrelevant. For the first time, I felt wholly safe, wholly loved, and wholly alive. The past, Caleb, betrayal, near death, existed only as a shadow, a reminder of what I had overcome. And now, with Rhys, I was ready to step fully into the light. Love, trust, and happiness weren't just possible. They were mine. The estate had never felt more like home. The halls echoed not with betrayal or whispers of deceit, but with laughter, warmth, and the quiet rhythm of a life reclaimed. Every morning, sunlight spilled across the polished floors, glinting off the flowers Rhys and I had chosen together for the garden. I had grown stronger, not just physically, but emotionally. Therapy was behind me now, replaced by long walks through the grounds, strategy meetings for the company, and evenings spent planning the future, both personal and professional. Caleb was a ghost from a past I no longer feared, stripped of influence and powerless to touch my life. Rhys had become my constant, not the man who saved me once, but the partner who chose me every single day. There was a quiet understanding between us, a trust that didn't need words. But sometimes, in the soft glow of our bedroom, he would whisper things like, "You are extraordinary, Ava." "I'm only extraordinary because I've survived," I would reply, pressing my hand to his chest. "And because I've learned to trust again." We had created routines that felt like rituals of love. Morning coffee on the balcony, quiet dinners where we shared dreams and plans, evenings spent reading side by side in our library. And while passion simmered, it was steady, deliberate, and deeply entwined with care. Every kiss, every touch, every whispered word was a promise renewed, to stand beside each other, to protect, to honor, and to love without reservation. One afternoon, as we walked the estate's gardens, Rhys paused under the old oak tree. "Do you ever think about how far we've come?" he asked. I looked up at him, feeling the warmth of the sun and his hand in mine. Every day, from betrayal to survival, from fear to trust, it's been a journey I never imagined. "And yet, here we are," he said, his eyes shining with affection. "Not just surviving, but thriving. Together." I leaned into him, the wind carrying the scent of blooming flowers and possibility.
Yes.
Together. We had rebuilt everything, our trust, my life, and even the legacy that had been threatened. I had returned to my father's firm, not as the naive daughter who once relied on Caleb, but as a decisive, confident woman who knew her worth and wielded it wisely. In the evenings, we would sit on the balcony, watching the city lights flicker in the distance, dreaming about the future. Children? Travel? Expanding the firm responsibly, ensuring that the mistakes of the past were never repeated? All of it felt possible now because we were no longer defined by fear, betrayal, or what others thought we could handle. And love, the kind that had seemed impossible when my heart was shattered, had not only returned, but it had flourished. Rhys's presence was a daily reminder that some things, when nurtured with care, could grow stronger than any pain or loss. As the stars emerged in the sky that night, I rested my head on his shoulder and whispered, "I finally feel safe. Truly safe." "You always were," he murmured. "You just had to believe it and allow yourself to be loved." The old Ava had died on that pavement, broken and betrayed. The new Ava stood tall, healed, and fiercely alive. With Rhys by my side, there were no limits, no shadows, and no fears left unchallenged. We had chosen this future together, a life full of love, respect, and partnership. And for the first time, I knew that happily ever after wasn't just a fairy tale. It was ours, and it was real,